Well, welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. This is our next series in school food programs around the world. My name is Debbie Field. I'm the coordinator of the Coalition for Healthy School Food, and we have a very exciting panel of 3 speakers who are going to talk to us and teach us about a very exciting school food program, the German school food program. Please introduce yourself in the chat, and hopefully there will be time for a little conversation with our speakers to learn more from their experience and how it could impact and help us here in Canada. The session is being recorded, and you can also let us know if you don't want your picture to be taken. We might take a picture at the end and turn our cameras on. So we in Canada are very excited because in our recent election campaign, the governing Liberals did make the first ever financial commitment to a school food program, and it's $1 billion over 5 years. Which might mean the beginning of a $200 million investment in March 2022. And we're very excited to make that happen. And we're going to be hoping we can learn from other federated countries like Germany about how they interact between the federal and provincial, or in their case, federal and state level. We've had a few other of these webinars. We had one on Brazil, on Denmark, Scotland, and then on Italy. So we're able, through this partnership between George Brown College, Ryerson University, the Coalition for Healthy School Food, and Food Secure Canada, to have these great conversations. So I'm going to turn it over to Suvadra, I think, or Alessandra, who's going to introduce our panelists.
Okay.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. And thank you all for joining us today. I'm Suvadra. I'm a PhD candidate at the Department of Community Health and Epidemiology at the University of Saskatchewan. I'm going to give a brief overview of today's webinar. The duration of today's webinar is 90 minutes. We'll start with roughly 1 hour of presentations from our 3 panelists, followed by a 15 to 20 minutes question and answer period. We encourage all of you to submit questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A button in the bottom corner. We also encourage you to upvote the questions that you would like to see answered. At the end of the session, we will select the top questions for our panelists to answer. And now I will turn it over to Alessandra to introduce our panelists for today.
Yeah. Thanks, Suvadra. So welcome everyone, and I'm very happy that we could organize this webinar. So I will shortly introduce the 3 speakers of today that will have complementary presentations. So the first speaker is Professor Ulrike Arens-Azevedo, who will give an overview of the organization of school feeding in Germany, and then as well as the governance features. So Professor Ulrike is educated in nutrition science and home economics from Bonn, and he has a master's degree in public health at the Federal University of Pernambuco in Brazil. And she also studied nutrition and chemistry for teachers in vocational schools in Berlin. She was formerly head of home economics in a vocational school in Berlin, and then she has been working as a professor at the Hamburg University of Applied Sciences at the Department of Nutritional Science and Home Economics. Professor Arens-Azevedo engaged in several research projects and nationwide supervising school meals, daycare meals, meals in nursing homes, and meals on wheels. And she also carried out further research with focus on regional products in mass catering, sustainability, and quality management. And in addition, she is long-term a member of the scientific presidium of the German Nutrition Society, and she's chair of the German Nutrition Society Special Mass Catering Group. Finally, I would mention that recently she co-authored a study on promoting sustainability in food consumption, developing an integrated food policy and creating fair food environment from the Federal Ministry of Food and Agriculture. Then the next speaker will be Dr. Ernestine Tecklenburg, sorry for my pronunciation, who will deal with the financing and funding of the German school food program. Dr. Tecklenburg has a diploma in nutrition and home economics and the Hamburg University of Applied Sciences, and a PhD from the Faculty of Education of the Leuphana University of Lüneburg in Germany. And she worked on corporate education for sustainable development with a focus on meals in nurseries, in theory and practice. And she is currently the leader of the Department of Communal Catering and Quality Assurance at the German Nutrition Society. She has led a study on cost and price structures in school catering. And also she has conducted a project titled Joint Action on nutrition and physical activity and inform in communal catering. She's author of several publications in the field of school food programs, also concerning food environment, nutrition and quality standards. And last but not least, Tim Bjornstrand will go through the practical situation and practical experiences on the ground concerning student and parents' participations, networks, barriers, and creative solutions, etc. Tim is a teacher and food activist who has a degree in high school education and a master's degree in environment protection from Rostock University. He's specialized in education for sustainable development, intercultural pedagogy, and system thinking. And he has a professional experience in education for sustainable development. And she's a food activist as well, who has worked in several projects in school concerning school food in different schools in Germany and abroad. And he also founded a network connecting the different stakeholders in school food to facilitate sustainability transformations of catering in alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals. So after this introduction of the speakers, I give the floor to Professor Ulrike Arens-Azevedo, who can start with the presentation.
Before I start with my presentation, I want to make some comments in advance. First of all, I think it's important to say that Germany had only a little experience with all-day schools. We started only 20 years ago, and therefore we have to learn a lot about the teaching, for instance, or catering during every day schools and so on. And what we can see is that more and more parents are asking for all-day schools, and therefore in a lot of countries, in a lot of states, we have implemented just a great number of all-day schools nowadays. And second, we have the European law over Germany and the other states of the European Union. And normally, I have to say that European law takes precedence over that of the member states. But in terms of health, in the area of health, it is not so. That does mean the national states can decide what they want in terms of health health. We have some agreements, European agreements, and some commitments on the European level, but finally the national state is deciding what they want to do. If you look to other legislation like food or food hygiene and so on, you will see that a European law is more important. Well, I will start with sustainable development goals. It's quite clear. We all know the Agenda 2030 from the United States. And you can see here just the cover of the publication of the European Union, which shows the sustainable development to this area. And what is important to say is that the European Union says to all member states, please make your own policy in terms of sustainability. And it's quite clear that Germany has done so. We have a national policy in sustainability, in sustainable development, and all member states had created just indicators, and these indicators will be evaluated from 2 to 2 years. So it's very good that we can see what is going on in the different parts. For instance, good health and well-being. We are looking for obesity and overweight as some typical indicators for it. And another thing what was published in the last year was the so-called Green Deal. And the so-called Green Deal had, I think, a very important principle of the European Union, which shows us from farm to fork. That does mean we are looking to the complete value chain of the production, beginning with the production of food and feed, and looking at the end to the consumer and the waste, for instance, and something like this. And this principle from farm to fork, you will just find in different laws of the European Union, which you can see just for food and food hygiene in 2002, 2004, 2006. And therefore, it was a very good way to say, well, we will look also to the institutions and to the mass catering in the institutions. And as you can see here, to improve the availability and price of sustainable food and to promote healthy and sustainable diets. In institutional catering, the Commission will determine the best way of setting minimum mandatory criteria for sustainable food procurement. And this will help cities, European Union hopes so, to play their part by sourcing sustainable food for schools, hospitals, public institutions, and it will also boost sustainable farming systems such as organic farming. These are the most important aspects, and why we had decided to do so and to look more to the mass catering and institutions as it was in the past were very clear that we have a lot of analyses looking to, for instance, the percentage of overweight and obesity and something like this. And therefore, it is something very important that we have to do something. And if you can see here, the strategy recognize the links between healthy people, healthy society, and a healthy planet. And therefore, we committed us to accept the goals, 17 goals of the United Nations, and to work with them. And this one, all of us know very well. You can see that the strategy for Europe on nutrition, overweight, obesity, and related health issues just were published in 2010. And in 2019, we received a very interesting book of the OECD showing us what does it mean in economical terms. And it's quite clear that all of us, all in Europe, have to do something to better this situation. And well, I have to say that in the past 20 years, the prevalence of overweight and obesity in Germany has increased, not decreased, has increased. Looking to children, it's a little bit better because in the last 20 years, it's very similar, the prevalence. And another platform, I can say it's better to say a platform on nutrition and physical activity was founded just very early, and on the basics of this platform, there were some activities like, for instance, the European Healthy School Lunches, which were took place in Italy, for instance. But there were developed some tools which are very helpful for schools, for instance, to make better food catering contracts and to show better what does it mean in terms of sustainability and how it will be possible to gain more, for instance, organic food in the schools. Well, and another thing, Alessandra just mentioned it, was in the last year that we published a very, very big book, around about 1900 pages. So you can imagine what that does it mean, because we had a more deeper look to what does it mean sustainable nutrition. We have seen sustainable development, it's quite clear, and it's all over the world a very good commitment. But what does it mean in terms of sustainable nutrition? And on the 900 pages, you will find all factors which can influence and which have an impact on us. And we said, well, these are the 4 key messages, the 4 key goals, what we have to keep in mind when we discuss about sustainable nutrition. On one hand, it's quite clear it's health, and health have an influence on life expectancy, on healthy life expectancy too, and on well-being, on the quality of life, for instance. And on the other hand, we have the environment and climate, and it's quite clear that the environment and climate have to be considered in the same way. And then we have social aspects, which are very important to see in which manner, for instance, people are working. And finally, we decided to say one of the most interesting part in order to have an influence on what we are consuming will be animal welfare. And what we can see, this is very deeply discussed nowadays in Germany, especially because it seems to be one of the most things what will cost a lot of money for the people of the agriculture production. Well, and then let us have a look to the current situation. as I just mentioned, the experience with all these schools in Germany is still recent. There was a program 2004 to 2007 that promoted the expansion of all-day schools. It was called Investment, Future, Education and Care. And after this, there were implemented more and more all-day schools. The offer of a midday meal is only mandatory in all-day schools. This was a decision of the Conference of Ministers of Education. And what I can say is that in some federal states, all-day schools are the rule. I'm looking to Hamburg, for instance, or looking to Berlin. You can see this is the normal situation, but looking to other states like Bavaria, for instance, you can see that only up around 15% of all schools are all-day schools. And what we have, what I can say about the number is that in Germany currently more than 32,000 schools we have. And well, the education there are coming 8.7 million of students and only 3.4 million in all-day schools, and only this one can pick up normally midday meal. Yes, then what I think this will be for Debbie the most interesting thing. First of all, I have to say, when we look to healthy and sustainable meals, so we have 5 ministries involved in it. So this is on the national level. It's the Ministry of Science and Education, the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, the Ministry of Environment and Nature Conservation, the Ministry of Health, and the Ministry of Family Affairs, Seniors, Youth, and so on. It's a very great title. So 5 ministries, and looking at the level of the 16 federal states, we have 16 federal states, you will find all these ministers in one way or another. Then specific departments of the ministries develop their own strategies. For instance, looking to sustainable food in schools, it's first the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. But if other resources have to be involved, this applies, for instance, or for example, catering in schools, there are so-called mirror departments. And it's interesting that to a certain extent, there is an exchange of content between the different ministries, but it's only sometimes, and it depends very much of the different people who are working in these departments and so on. Well, and perhaps Germany, I think Germany is a rich country. I hope that other people will see it also too. But we have in some percentage also what we are calling food insecurity. And therefore the national government resolved to establish a program with the title Education and Participation. And this is, for instance, for people, for households at risk of poverty. And what does this mean, risk of poverty? These households have an income below 60% of the average income of the other households in Germany. And therefore they can receive some money for school expenses, such as books, excursions, writing utensils, for instance, but they can pick up also free meals. And what we have seen in the past, and this is very problematical that only a very few percentage of persons are receiving these free meals. And perhaps I think it's because, well, the procedure is very complex, perhaps too difficult and time consuming for the parents. And what we have seen too is that specific informations by schools remain or unclear or are not given. And therefore it might be as a background for such only a small percentage of people who are, or of children who are receiving free meals in Germany. Well, what we can see from the nationwide researches is, on the other hand, a very great variety in terms of responsibilities, forms of management, organization, equipment, offers, and meal selection. And quality management, what is really very important if we want that something works well, takes place on the part of the provider of the catering campaigns, but in their own company. But external quality assurance by schools or daycare provider only takes place in part. In clear structure, for instance, in Berlin. Berlin has really a central state control point, and they are looking for the quality very regular. And only in Berlin is another thing. School meals are for free till the 6th class. They will increase the number of children in the future too. And in other federal states, parents have to pay. And I mentioned that Ernestine will talk about a little bit who is paying and what kinds of costs will be in the school meals. Well, then a very I think it's a very confused picture, let us say. Well, we have the national government, and on national level, we have no school food program, but you see the federal states, they are responsible for schools, for education and philosophy of nutrition, if they have something like this. And the communities or cities, I think, Ernestine, you are talking about local authorities of the cities. They are responsible for school buildings, eating rooms, and so on. And what can do the national level is only support, for instance, the quality standards of the German Nutrition Society. Well, they can say, we want that the federal states adopt it, but nothing else. And what they can do nowadays is that they can make some investment. In the last years, the national government made a lot of investment in computers in schools. And this will work also when we look to the rooms, to the instructors. They can do something and they can invest really some money. And the federal states normally they are responsible for the educational curriculum. This is the normal thing. And on the same time, they can say some concrete requirements for school meals. And if you look to the regulation on the federal state level, you will find in some countries that they say, well, we want that school meals are healthy and sustainable, but only in some countries it is so. And at the last, the communities, the local authorities, the cities, they make the concrete contracts with the caterers, and they really make also the partial financing of the running costs, the investments in room, equipment, and also in personnel. Well, so it's very complicated, the system. And if you look to the schools on the one side and this community on the other side, you will find in a certain way, it's clear divided on schools has to look to the education in general, perhaps to nutrition education. Sometimes we find in schools some school food concepts. Sometimes there is a possibility for food preparation, and sometimes really for urban gardening. But school has to keep in mind that there is a necessity of participation of the parents, of the students as well, of the teachers. That does mean we have always an involvement of committees. And on the part of the community or the local authority, you see they are responsible for the infrastructure, for buildings, the eating environment like canteens, also for procurement of, for instance, biological or organic food and something like this. And it's quite clear in this case too, we have a participation of the regions, and we have to also support by networking centers, and therefore it makes it makes the situation and the pathways more complex. And this was the background why we decided in Germany to implement networking centers. All 16 states have such an institution. It's for school food, and it was extended in 13 states to the catering of daycare center too. And on the national level, we have the National Quality Center for Nutrition in daycare centers and schools. It works in Berlin, and as you can see, it was only set up in 2016. And the main objectives you can read here is to coordinate and develop measures and initiatives around the topic of good food in daycare centers and schools in Germany, and to improving, assuring and monitoring the quality of the catering services is of key importance here. Well, and then looking to the philosophy of school food, on the part of the scientific or on the scientific part, we are thinking that school food must increase the mental and physical performance during the school day, make part to avoid or reduce nutrition related chronic diseases, contributing to enjoyment and well-being, improvement of immune defense, and improvement of quality of life. And one thing very, very important that works very well in schools is quite clear. It's a place to learn something. And in addition, we hope that learning and training, health promoting and sustainable eating behavior will be possible in the future. And one thing what we had a more deeper look was to the so-called food environment. Because we are thinking that the food environment makes a lot of influence in order to decide what people will take away, what kind of meals, for instance. And you can see here we included 4 phases: the exposition, access, choice, and consumption. And if it is very well formed, so it might be that it can have a very good short-term effects and long-term effects as well. But we don't have any research about it. We are discussing in Germany to make some research about the influence of the food environment, but till this moment we don't have. So if you look to the international literature, you will find a lot of studies about this special thing. what we made in the nationwide research, it passed in 2014. Its publication was of 2015. We asked the pupils, the students, what are their likes and dislikes. And I picked it up because I think it's very interesting to see. I think it's an international likes, that on the first place is pasta, second place is pizza, and third place is pancakes. And in Germany, the fourth place were fried potatoes. And we asked two for the dislikes, and you can see here spinach, soups, fish, and potatoes. But I have to mention that the acceptance of fish in the north were better than in the south. And as you can see here, it was a very impressive number of students which answered to our questionnaire, more than 12,000. So I think it's in a certain way representative for Germany. And what we have done also, that we had made an analysis of the menu plans and compared it with the quality standard of the German Nutrition Society. This was the edition from 2014. And as you can see here, the base were 4 consecutive weeks. And well, I only will make a look to this part what is colored in red, and you can see here what the frequency of meat, of fish, and of raw vegetable or daily vegetable. So we can say to make a certain summary, we have a lot of things to do. And I have to mention that the quality standard was changed, and Ernestine will show you in which way. And if we compared these results with the new quality standard, it will be worse. Well, and what we asked the students to was to make some assessment of the rooms, of the food environment. And you can see here very, very good that they reclaimed quiet and comfortable. This was not a good example, and we had to do a lot of things in terms of make the rooms better as they are nowadays. But I have to say, we have very, very often school buildings which are just old. And if you want to implement a nice canteen in the old buildings, it's not so easy to do, and it costs a lot of money. So therefore it's well, it's yet a lot thing to do. It was for me very interesting that the school directors, the school principals rate their canteens in the same way as the students. So it might be a very good site what we have. And perhaps you have seen that I have some brought with me some pictures of schools, and these are realistic schools in Germany, especially in Hamburg. Well, and what we had a look for was also nutrition education. This is not a central subject in general schools in Germany. In primary schools, you find some few modules within the framework of health education. There are a number of schools who have own kitchens in which students can learn what kind of food is healthy and how to prepare, for instance. This is one of the schools who have a very nice kitchen, I have to say. And for the schools, there are curriculum plans at the state level, which the teachers can implement in their own responsibility. And we looked and asked the school directors, the school principals in about the frequency of the lessons in nutrition education, and you can see very well, there is a great part which have some lessons weekly, but the other part you can see here, it's only 1 or twice per year. And so you can imagine that this will not work in a term of continuous education. So I shall make my conclusion. The SDGs are established in education. We call this in Germany nachhaltige Bildung, but have not played an important role in school meals. However, the discussions on sustainable diets are moving more and more into focus, and the dimension of sustainability are now clearly anchored in the new quality standard for school meals from the German Nutrition Society. Ernestine will show you this later on. I think, in my opinion, I have to say the main hurdle in Germany in transforming school nutrition is a strict separation between the responsibilities of education and catering. So, two resources very different, and they do not work in the way together as it had to be. And when we keep in mind the different dimensions of sustainability, the different goals, that does mean health, environment, climate, animal welfare, and social aspects, it must be clear that only when different resource and different decision-making levels come together, it will be possible to reach the goal of healthy and sustainable school food for our children. And finally, I have to mention that not yet established are regular surveys on the situation in schools and no studies about the impact of healthy, sustainable meals on children. And finally, to say at all, there is a long way for us to go. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Professor Ulrike Arens-Azevedo. I will pray the following panelists to also stay attentive to the time. I will remind you a bit when we are around the 15-20 minutes, so that we have time for the questions as well. That yeah, I already have some questions in mind from this very interesting presentation. Okay, so Ernestine, please, you can start your presentation.
I'm sorry. Now I hope everybody can see my presentation. And now for everybody in the presentation modus. Before I start or go further on, I would like to remind you what Ulrike just said or told you, that we have this separate responsibilities on national, state level, on federal level, and the school authorities. And it's important when I come to show you some results of the last study I conducted regarding prices and cost structures in school meals in Germany, because most of the funding is the most part of the funding is covered by the school authorities on the community level and not on the federal level. The federal state is more responsible for the funding, for example, for the teachers, but not for the personal costs which belong to the school food at all. So results from my study regarding the cost and price structures in school catering, you see that we have First, we ask the local school authorities with a questionnaire, and that are their answers. And as you can see, even if they offer school meals or lunch at their school, they don't have, or they don't really all have a dining room where the pupils can eat. So we have a problem in the infrastructure there. Even though we had a, a program on national level which funded infrastructure or investment in future education and care, like Ulrike mentioned, we still have a gap there when it comes to school food. And also for the kitchen types which are available in the schools, we have a lot of schools which have delivery kitchen or relay kitchen, but that means they can't offer or can't prepare school meal in schools at all. They depend on caterer and on the contracts the school make. So it is really important that the quality of the school meals are written down in that contracts, or they have something where the quality they say what quality of their school food they want. But when we ask them if they have contracts with the school, the lunch providers, you see that around 70% of them have contracts for all school, but there are still local school authorities which do not have contracts for all of their school or don't have contracts at all. That means they have a lunch provider, but they didn't make a commitment, or the lunch provider doesn't know what quality of school food he or she has to offer at the school. And then we looked deeper, even if the authorities have a specification for the tenders. And you see that even if there is a contract, that doesn't mean the quality is really specified in these contracts. That's a real gap for us, because we think it's really important to have a clear knowledge of what quality you want at a school. And it's also important that even the pupils, the teacher, and the school itself know what to expect of the school food they are offered. Then we ask further or deeper, what are the 3 most important requirements? And after that are the 3 most answered requirements. That is the varied food offer, that it changes, that not every day these pupils are offered potatoes, for example, that it's DGE compliant, so it has to comply to the recommends of the German Nutrition Society, but we don't know exactly what they mean to compliant to the DGE requirements, because they didn't state that exactly in the questionnaire. And the next point was the price. So it's really important for them that the costs are low and they get the best quality for a low price. So funding is a big topic in the field of school food. And the next question is also important, but Ulrike also mentioned it before. It's the quality management of the food, school food, and we asked how quality controls are carried out. And when the catering is self-managed by the local authorities, then they have commissioned inspections and discussions with their kitchen staff. But if it's part or completely external managed, then there's only some discussion with meal providers, school staff, or committees. There are surveys, incoming good inspections, sample meals, and they rely on the contract specification, as we with keeping in mind that there are not so many local authorities which have contract specifications. So there we have a lot to do in regards of the school food management. Regarding the funding, we ask if the school authorities pay for the service personnel, and you see that around 28% do that in all of the schools, and around 1/3 do that in part of their schools. But there are some authorities which do not pay for that, then it's included in the price the parents or the pupils pay. For the furniture, for the dining room and the furniture for the kitchen, you see it's more clearly linked to the school authorities than it is for the service personnel costs. And even operating costs are not clearly a part of the local school authorities. Around 56% of them bear the operating costs, but the other part of them settle the operating cost with the service provider according to the consumption, or even calculate a lump sum. That means even though when we had a lockdown in Corona time, some of the service provider paid the operating cost for the schools. This was a school meal kitchen, which is also a big problem in Germany for them. So looking at the share, it's different. It's hard to say how much, how is the percentage of the share the parents or the pupils or the local authorities pay. It depends on the system, on the production system you regard and the school. But with this picture, you get an idea of how the funding is shared between the two different groups. Sorry. So you see that pro rata, the local school authorities take pay for the operating cost, also pro rata for the personal cost, as you also saw in the results of the questionnaire, and they take over the investment cost and administrative cost. Administrative cost I didn't mention before. That are the costs for the persons who are working to make the, for example, contracts or the specification of the tenders at the local school authorities, or who control in the service provider in the best case, for example. So our conclusion regarding the local school authorities was that with regard to school catering management, they finance a considerable part of the cost for school meals through their subsidies, and that they can actively shape the frame conditions for school catering. But up to now, they do not take these tasks as they just take it as a purely administrative part, but do not so much as a control and management task as it should be. So we have a lot to do to activate them and to teach them how they can really see that as a control and management task, or take that task fully over. So after that, I would like to introduce some activities of the German Nutrition Society to you, because as
you have 5 minutes. I'm sorry if I interrupt you.
No problem.
Yeah.
As Ulrike just mentioned, we developed the DGE quality standards for meals in specific settings since 2007. We developed various voluntary quality standards for meals in the specific setting, as which you can see at the bottom of the picture, for meals in daycare centers, for meals in schools, for meals in companies, for meals in clinics, and for meals on wheels and in residential homes for the elderly, as a part of the Inform initiative, which promotes healthy diets and more exercise in Germany. And the core elements of the DGE quality standards are criteria for a healthy and sustainable food choice, the frequency of serving various food groups, like you saw in the results of the study Ulrike showed you. I just want to say something to the changes we did. For example, focusing sustainability, we reduced the meat per week. We to once a week. So as you just saw, that most of the schools did offer meat more than twice a week. Now that would be mostly all of the schools, or nearly all of the schools, would be in red by now, which took part in the study before, because they even twice a week would be too much then. And we have also criteria for the menu planning and preparation to optimize the quality of the offered food and support a sustainable production process. Target group of the quality standard, for example, for meals in schools, are the responsible people, the decision makers, the employees which handle nutrition in schools. It supports the kitchen professionals in offering a balanced menu. It's a voluntary guideline, and it's therefore only mandatory in 3 federal states. But many local school authorities contractually required food suppliers to adhere to the DGE quality standards, for example, in Berlin. And to show you some more of how we did, what we did new in the actual DGE quality standards is that we looked at the aspect of health promoting and the sustainable school meals more focused, and along the process chain, as you can see here. and we have different capitals where we parts where we really focus on different parts of the system that you can see in that picture, and you can look at the translated GGE quality standard later on. There's also a link in my presentation. So, and we really focused on to put the results of studies like KICS and NAGAST, which focus on sustainability in the school food management, into the quality standards, and to give the more information on how in detail, like in the food groups, for example, or how we come to the criteria we offer.
This is almost time off.
Okay.
1 minute. Yeah, 1 minute maybe if you want to conclude or wrap up.
Okay, thank you. Okay, maybe I just end with that. Maybe you can have a look at later if you have time and you're interested. You can also come and write me a mail and ask. And we also have a lot of different projects with regard to school food at the German Nutrition Society. That are just some of them, and most of them are funded in the focus of the action plan, and also are focused on school food in different federal states, because we also host some of the networking platforms for school meals in Germany. So now I will end my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for your presentation, which was complementary to the one of Ulrike. And now we go to the presentation of Team Jönstrand. So that then there will be hopefully some time for the questions that are already in the Q&A. Yeah, and a question that may pop up.
Sure. How much time do I have?
If you can deal with that in 15 minutes,
yeah, sure.
It would be great. Yeah.
Absolutely. You see my shared screen?
Yeah,
that's great. Okay. I belong to a network which is called School Food Reconnected. We are an international network committed to cafeteria transformations, as we call it. And transformations of cafeterias does not only mean like healthy and more sustainable food, but also a lot of activities connected to the food in school, like the measuring of food waste, the growing of vegetables, participation in food-related matters and decisions, and so on. So this is what you see depicted on those tomatoes on the left-hand side. And I will try to contrast this with the situation in German schools as it is today. A little bit of a background, but much of this has been said earlier. You heard that we have a very diverse tradition of school meals in Germany. So some school feeding in the late 80s in Eastern Germany, almost no school feeding in Western Germany. So when I myself went to school in the 1980s, I went home at 1 p.m., 2 p.m. and got lunch prepared by my mother. So that's the default solution. And it was first after this PISA assessment, the shock that Germany was wakened up by in the 2000s, that we realized, okay, we have to catch up with the international elite of schooling. We have to do afternoon classes. But still, because we have this fragmented situation with 16 federal states and different legislations, there was no national school food program installed until today. And the only basis for what we are talking about is this decision Ulrike talked about of the conference of the education secretaries, that if you have a all-day school, you are obliged to offer a warm lunch. So what does it look like in reality? This reality is a bit complicated because we have different food offers. On the left-hand side, you see a cafeteria, and this is maybe quite a fancy kitchen adapted to cook and chill preparation. So you would have some kind of cafeteria or counter where warm food is distributed in almost every all-day school. And in addition to this, you would also have bistros or kiosks that would sell other food items. Germany being a strongly urbanized country with a lot of cities, we also have the competition with other food offers nearby, because there's always a bakery near a school, there's fast food restaurants and so on. So just to give you an example, we can take a look at a random school here in Lower Saxony in Braunschweig, and in yellow you have a gymnasium school here, and you have a cafe just a few meters away, you have a bakery here, and you have lots of fast food options within a circle of 150 meters. And these offers outside the school, they are not just there, they advertise actively for students. So they would go and advertise for student menus with soft drinks and desserts. And so some of them are cheaper than what you get in the school's cafeteria. Others are a bit more expensive. But what you also have to take into consideration, many older students don't really leave the school for the food, but for freedom. They would leave the school because they like to experience this feeling of being able to go around and make their own choices. In this situation, in my observation, we have some kind of a vicious circle. If it is conventional food served, and we got some examples of that earlier. You heard that we in general have quite low participation in cafeteria lunches among older students. The younger ones would participate to a higher degree. But this low participation, I think you named that, Ernestine, puts cost pressure on the caterer, because it is much easier if you have 600 students eating than if you have 150 students eating there. So yeah, you need a certain amount of students for the cafeteria to go around. So if you don't have them, as a caterer, you would be reluctant to optimize your menus. And you would also ask the school for permission to sell sweets and snacks for additional income, because otherwise it's not a good business. And these tendencies would reinforce students and sometimes also teachers. I'm talking to a lot of teachers, and there are very few teachers actually eating in the school cafeterias. Would reinforce their tendency to drop out of school lunches and look for food offers elsewhere. And this, in turn, reinforces the tendency of low participation. So what can you do about this? I think there's different possibilities how to break this vicious circle, and one would be funding. It's not really realistic in Germany, but it would be an option to fund school lunches with more money and take away this cost pressure. We heard about mandatory standards, and I think that's a good way to go, that the caterer can also only sign a contract if he complies to certain standards, and we have excellent standards from the German Nutrition Association there. The students' behavior can, I think, only be cut by food literacy education. It's only if they really understand that this eating outside of school, these soft drinks, the cookies and all that stuff are not good for their health, and they have negative impacts sometimes on the environment too, that some of them might make other choices. And in this context, it is also very important that students and also teachers will develop ownership for the cafeteria they have in their school. For example, through being part of decision making and so on. So I continue a little bit with this ownership issue. In Germany, because we had those empty afternoons, when all-day schooling was introduced in the early 2000s, we had a rise of student-driven companies. And I think this is really an interesting model, even if it doesn't really fix the food issue, but it's an interesting way to activate students and to get them into contact with food. So many of these student-driven companies deal with catering. And here on the left-hand side, we see products produced by one of these student enterprises in Berlin. We see a student cooperative, which is a variant of a student company from Nelson Mandela School in Greven at an award ceremony. So they got a lot of recognition and praise for their activities, and this all strengthens ownership for their endeavors to make food better. As for the kiosks in school, we have different models, but many of them are driven by associations of students, parents, teachers together. And some of them would focus on fair trade items or organic food. So this is also where food literacy is developed hands-on and where ownership is created. In some cases, when students and teachers and parents run such a kiosk successfully, they would also come up with the idea, why don't we take over the cafeteria of the school? Why don't we try to change the whole school food system in our institution? And here's a case study, an example of one school in North Rhine-Westphalia, where parents and students and teachers ran such a snack bar, organic snack bar, and then the caterer in the big cafeteria, he dropped out, and they founded a non-profit association, which then took over the cafeteria. And maybe just two interesting things about this. This association, they had one ideal, one aim, and that was to go for 100% organic procurement in their cafeteria. And everything was adapted to this, and they actually succeeded. It was quite a stressful way there, but because they were going non-profit, they could reinvest all the revenues that before that, with an ordinary caterer, went to profit in fair salaries, in their cafeteria, in better products, in better atmosphere in the lunchroom, and so on. Another issue they had to deal with, and that's a challenge for everybody who wants to run a cafeteria in Germany, is the European procurement law, because when they officially took over the cafeteria, they had to compete with other caterers, like ones from France or the Netherlands, on an EU level, because if a city, like the city of Hürth in this case, wants to sign a contract, even with a local association, it will be a European call if it goes over a certain threshold. The grassroots initiatives like these kiosks and student, parent, teacher-run cafeterias, I think they hold quite many opportunities because, as I said before, ownership can be developed, food literacy by doing things. They have freedom in decision making. They run a non-profit business and can follow their ideals. But I think if you think about scaling models like that, there are quite some limitations because it always depends on the commitment of individuals. It also depends on local policymakers. And to wait for this to pop up everywhere, this will not bring us to meet the Sustainable Development Goals in 2030 in school nutrition. This is a process which is much too slow. So I think with all of these models, even if there's very positive aspects, we have a lack of governance. So to see what you can do about governance, a short look at the example of Bremen. The city of Bremen, which is also the federal state of Bremen, they adopted an action plan for healthy nutrition. And they did it like this student parent association. They just wrote down, we want to go for 100% organic. And it's a process going on, but the feeling is that this will work out. It's not easy to say if it is a model to scale, like for the whole of Germany. There are some specific conditions in Bremen, political conditions. Again, we had civil engagement, a petition against cheap meat in public meals when this plan came about. But it appears to be successful, even if there are cost and administration issues and the hurdle with procurement law. But I think projects like these have to do some pioneer work, and best practices have to be developed, and then others might be able to profit from this experience and do it faster and easier in other places. Okay, what's the time, Alessandra? How much do you have left?
There are 12 minutes to 6, so maybe if you can wrap up in 2 minutes, then we have some 10 minutes for
I try. Okay.
Yeah. A very interesting thing.
Yeah. I had some details on these calls for tenders, and just one point which is interesting. Because you are thinking about farm to fork strategies, farm to school strategies in Canada, and with this model, which comes quite close, because Bremen wants regional sourcing of their school food. It is difficult to set up the calls in a way that it's actually mandatory to bring in regional food, and there you have to play some tricks. Basically, you don't call it regional, but you have to call it seasonal. That's what they do to make it applicable to European law. So they attached a seasonal calendar for the region of Bremen, where you can actually see what vegetables would grow in what months of the year. And they would also take in those vegetables that are actually seasonal. And by this criterion, they would secure that these produce come from the region, because it's a big advantage for people from France or southern Germany to bring their fresh produce to Bremen, complying to those criteria. There are other programs and institutions promoting sustainable school feeding, and we heard quite a bit about the guidelines from the German Association for Nutrition. And I want to stress there are even guidelines for snacks, and that's very good, because these guidelines are applicable to all the kiosks and bistros we have in school. I think the office of these Vernetzungsstellen, these networking hubs, you see a screenshot there on the lower left side, are very valuable, very great resources. And we have an upcoming integration with school food programs and initiatives on a European level. We have something like a field to school network where examples from different European countries are collected. And in the EU Farm to Fork strategy that Ulrike named in the beginning of her talk, we have a project for the next 4 years, which is called School Food for Change. And there a lot of European cities will cooperate and test models of sustainable school feeding. And I really have some hope that good best practices will come out of this project. So it's going in the European direction. And I think for us in Germany, that's an advantage. We have these checks from outside, we have inspiration from other countries and so on. One thing you have to think about with all these offers to transform cafeterias, schools in Germany are under pressure. It's not only COVID, it's also digitalization, it's inclusion and individualization, it's reforms and rollbacks of reforms. And most headmasters I talk to would say, okay, food literacy, are you kidding me? What do you want? Like we have so much things to do. Don't put it on top of everything else. So yeah, I don't know about Canada, but that's a challenge that we have to deal with even in our endeavors to implement the Sustainable Development Goals in school feeding. What I think could be an answer to these problems is if you do activities related to food, like you cook in school, you grow your vegetables, you monitor food waste, you let students participate, you will always tackle many issues at a time. So in an earlier study, I did a graphic which shows that all these activities are connected to at least 3, but often 8 or 9 SDGs. And by working with school food and the SDGs, you will address many different issues and problems like gender equity, like healthy nutrition, like education on global consumption, and so on. Climate change, everything. I put down some tentative recommendations. I don't know if they really apply, but from my perspective, I would recommend to implement strong participation of all stakeholders, just to have this grassroots feeling and to create ownership in school food programs, to invest in training of kitchen staff and teachers and make them work well together with a pedagogical framework, and to go for whole school approaches in general for integration with the SDGs in all aspects that are related to school feeding. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Many thanks. So many thanks, Tim, and many thanks to all the speakers for this very interesting presentation. Also, many thanks for ending with some recommendation and that could be useful for the Canadian example and the Canadian situation as well. So now, yeah, let's jump a few minutes to the Q&A part. I see a few questions already partially have been answered, but partially the speakers can answer now. I just see one from Gary Hoyer that point out how many aspects to consider to improve school meal programs, from the high quality of ingredients, the proper control, good governance, etc. So he asks if you would choose one aspect or some aspect that you would suggest accomplishing to dramatically improve things, what would you do? So what would you well, from where would you start? So anyone who feel like answering.
So perhaps I shall start because I'm looking more from the national level and the level of the national government. What we as the scientific advisory board recommended to the German government was to make school meals for free for all. I have to say for all, and we calculated it because you have to say cost pressure will be always there, and Ernestine and Tim has said it very well. So I think it's one of the things, and I think children are so important for our future that it must be possible to do so. Well, to say the amount for Germany, we calculated per year's amount of 5.5 billion per year. This includes the food, includes the personnel, includes the environment. But I think we are rich enough to invest this. And I hope that, well, the future government, we do not know what we will have in the future. I have no idea, but perhaps they will discuss about it and perhaps it will work in this way. I think it's one of the most important things for me.
Yeah, very good. If anyone wants to add something that comes to mind.
I totally agree. To take decisions like that, make it free of charge, and then implement mandatory standards on the level of federal states or nationwide, and then things will begin to happen, I think.
Okay, very clear. And okay, let's go to another question so that we address most of them. How much does parent pay for the meal program? So a very concrete question. And does it vary geographically?
Yes, it varies geographically, and it's like the 3 to 4 euros per school meal per day, which the pupils eat at the school. So it's a high amount of money they invest each month in the school.
Okay.
So food.
Yeah, very good. And okay, and then Suvadra was referring to the Ulrike presentation when she explained these different strategies, the various developed at the ministry level from the various ministry. If there is an informal arrangement that coordinates these various strategies.
Very good question. We are trying this. We tried it in the last 10 years, I have to say, to come together and to discuss together and to, well, implement a common strategy for all of us. But I had mentioned it. It depends very, very often of the persons which are involved, very often of the interest, very often of the motivation of the different persons. So it is not very good established in the infrastructure. We are all very motivated. I can say this in the ministries and on the level of the networking centers and so on and so on. But it is so difficult to come together and form and implement a common strategy for all of us. So this is one of the things what we have to do. I hope that it will be possible in the future, but actually, we don't have anything like this. I tried to show you, we have such called mirror departments. They, it is necessary that they discuss one ministry with the other, but it works sometimes, sometimes it don't work. So it's very difficult, really.
Okay, maybe it's already time, but maybe one more thing, going to a higher scale even. I see the question from Suvadra that can we say that the EU policy will influence and shape the German school food scenario to a great extent? So like the impact of the EU level, which was also a question that I wanted to ask, and what are the ways to overcome this constraint of the EU level sometimes that happen with the procurement law, etc. If there are, mainly bottom-up way of and creative way of overcoming this constraint. So what can be done in this sense?
Just for the hurdles with procurement, I think, as I named before, that best practices will establish if it's like on the level of cities or countries, they will, and already now in these networking hubs for school food in the countries which we have in every federal state, they are providing guidelines and helping documents how to deal with European procurement. So I think these are like the starting problems of a process that will be much easier in a few years.
Yeah, and I would like to add that not every local authorities has the problem with the EU law because they are under the amount of money with their school food offer. So it's just, there's a, when you are over 200,000 euros around that, then it's the EU law which you have to apply.
And in addition, what is nearly not possible to change the actual European law. So this will take years and years and years in the future. So we have to work with it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks a lot. I think I don't know if we can go beyond the time limit. Maybe 2 minutes more.
No problem.
There is this question, if there is a specific national school food program you admire or wish to emulate. See this last question. Or maybe, some good practice within the German school food program. It's a school food program. Yeah, if you.
Sorry, could you rephrase the question?
Okay. The question is, if there is any specific national school food program that you take example from, you admire, you wish to emulate. This is a question from Gary again.
And I think actually you all addressed this in different ways, more even, I mean, you can think as you think of the answer, but you certainly gave us principles. I think, Tim, you gave us very strong principles on community bottom-up approaches that work, and both Ernestine and Ulrike gave us very strong thoughts on universality and appropriate funding. So yes, I mean, we talked about Finland before. We often talk about Japan. I actually think from listening to you three and from these other webinars that we are in a redesign phase globally. Because of what we understand about the crisis of fast food, the health implications of obesity, diabetes that you've shared, and also I think a crisis of big cafeteria. I mean, the thing I really got again from your three presentations that I got strongly in our one from Scotland was we have to from my view in Canada, we don't want to emulate big caterers, big cafeteria. That's the big crisis, because then you end up, I think, spending so much money on an industrial model when in fact that's not going to work for healthy food. as you talked about, food literacy, student engagement, youth engagement, and I think everything we know about food in terms of the love of good, simple food rather than a massive caterer that is competing with the stores and therefore going broke, and just the infrastructure and the money in that. So anyway, I certainly got that sense from you that we're on the right direction in Canada, where we focus a lot on community development, community engagement, diverse, and even municipal government. Tim, I thought that some of what you shared with us will really help us with empowering municipal government to be a player who is often closer to people and more able to, create that sense of place. But anyway, I just helped to rephrase it, Tim, while you were thinking of your answer. If there are any other examples from the world you would like to show us.
I can just say briefly something about the Swedish program, as I'm a Swedish citizen too. So living here, I see the advantages of free school meals for everybody, because quality tends to be higher, and this also influences the perception of food in schools. So that's a big wheel to turn. And then also in the Swedish legislations, we have a demand for food councils in the schools, where we have that in Germany too, but it's not mandatory. We have it in some schools, but in Sweden there has to be a food council of parents, administration of the school, school principal, students coming together and discussing food issues and making decisions on food-related matters, like do we want to have a second vegetarian day, or issues like that, and that increases ownership and participation a lot.
Okay, well, maybe we should just end. Thank you very much. We will be able to share all your slides, I think, with people who've attended. We'll be having the recording made public, and we really appreciate your amazingly helpful comments. We all took lots of notes, and there is lots of actually positive learning, because you have figured out how your federal government can be involved in terms of setting standards and financing infrastructure and creating at least a conversation. And you have, of course, the additional of the EU, which we don't have, but lots of learning for us. So we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Also, but I could, a reflection came to mind. Also, it's important also the way quality is communicated, because we saw the example from the Italian Food Insider, no? the Italian case, that from parents who very cared about the quality of the school, then an organization was created, Food Insider, who became basically a national organization for ranking the quality of school meals. And this created a very positive, somehow, competition among local practices for improving the school canteens. This ranking and the way that quality is communicated created this positive outcome. So this could be like an example also for Germany, or for other contexts as well. Yeah, just a concluding reflection. But yeah, thanks a lot. It was very interesting. And yes, as Debbie said, the slide will be shared, and this webinar is recorded and will be shared in the website of the Coalition for Healthy School Food, together with other examples. Yeah.
Fabulous. Okay, take care, everybody. Bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Really very helpful.
Thanks.
Fantastic. Well done. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.